All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of Believe in the Eagles. This is a special trade deadline look at what the Eagles could be doing at the deadline. They already added safety Kevin Byard from the Tennessee Titans, but with the trade deadline on Tuesday, what else could they be looking at? Well, various reports out there suggest that the Eagles could be looking to add a linebacker. Diana Rossini from The Athletic puts that out there. Jordan Hicks, the former Eagle linebacker, is a name to kind of keep an eye on with Minnesota. If the Vikings lose on Sunday to Green Bay, they could be a team that starts to look to deal some pieces off. We'll see. They've won a couple games in a row, but Hicks is the kind of guy that the Eagles could use. Coverage, versatile guy, played here, of course. He would be an interesting name at the linebacker position. Nakobe Dean, Zach Cunningham, and Nick Morrow right now are the guys, but they're obviously looking for more depth at that spot in case there's an injury. We already saw Dean get hurt. If Dean gets hurt and Morrow plays, you're really down to two capable linebackers. They don't really have another guy. So Hicks would be an interesting name to keep an eye on, but where would he fit in? Would he take over for Cunningham? Would he basically replace Nakobe Dean? I don't know that that's something they want to do. So that's something to keep an eye on. The linebacker position for the Philadelphia Eagles. Another spot that you could look to see is maybe another corner. I know a lot of people on my radio show have asked about Patrick Surtain over in Denver, hearing that he's not going to be moved by the Broncos. I think the Eagles like Bradley Roby, but the injury status there, he is like the fourth or fifth guy. I mean, you think about Avonte Maddox started the season at nickel corner. He got hurt. And then, of course, Zach McPherson was hurt before the season even started. He was supposed to be the backup there. And now Bradley Roby's out. They've used James Bradbury in that role. So they've had a variety of guys in the corner, slot corner spot that they've kind of rotated around. Josiah Scott they brought in. I wouldn't be surprised if they did bring in another player at that position. They've been doing it for years. I mean, they got up so many different corners on this team that they have brought in. Not many have played the Mac McCains of the world, and a long list of trades they have made for unknown guys. If they make a trade, it will probably be for a more proven commodity that can play the slot corner spot there. And I think that's something to keep an eye on for Tuesday's trade deadline. Another report out there is interesting, suggesting that the Eagles are open to trading Derek Barnett. Now, what does that actually mean? Barnett asked for a trade before the season started, and there's no interest there. He's the James Harden right now of the Eagles. Not quite accomplished as James Harden, but a first-round pick, has an injury issue that he last year missed the whole year. So he doesn't really have recent resume to tout. He is an edge rusher, first-round pick, had a couple sacks seasons in 2019, 2020. I think the 2 years he combined for about 13 sacks in those 2 years. Teams looking for edge rushers might call the Eagles. The one thing I could say that this is interesting, they could essentially, they traded a fifth and a sixth for Byard. They could try to recoup those picks by trading Barnett, and maybe they just get a fifth, or maybe they just get a sixth. I don't know that that's even possible. I think Barnett is just such a flyer for a team. Last year, the Eagles traded a fourth to get the guy from the Bears. My mind's blanking on who they traded to get from the Bears, but it didn't work out. They traded a fourth-round pick. So maybe the Eagles can get a team to give a fourth, fifth, sixth. I'm not optimistic, but they're open. So the way I read that is them being quote-unquote open to trading Derek Barnett is the Eagles basically trying to get that out there and see if they can drum up a couple calls for Derek Barnett, try to get some draft picks, and then either recoup the draft picks they lost for Byard. Why am I forgetting the guy from the Bears? Now I feel like I have to look up the Bears trade last year. Eagles-Bears trade. Eagles, I'm sure you guys are watching this right now, and you are yelling at me and telling me that it was who? Well, it's funny. I Google Eagles Bears trade and everything comes up Jalen Carter. The Bears got to feel terrible about that trade. Um, Robert Quinn. Okay, Robert Quinn was the trade. But yeah, the Eagles try to recoup maybe a fifth, sixth that they traded for Byard, maybe to add some more picks into their coffers and then spin those picks to go get a Jordan Hicks that we just mentioned. What about the trade that was floated out as a mock trade from Mike Tannenbaum on ESPN, which he wrote at the 33rd Team, which is a website that he runs. Former like Tannenbaum thing is interesting. It's not just a talking head former GM throwing a deal out there. Tannenbaum and Roseman have a relationship. They have a history. Famously, Roseman wrote all these letters, and Tannenbaum's the only person that really, reciprocated. Both Florida guys. So Tannenbaum floats out there that the Eagles should trade for Derrick Henry. Okay. This is interesting. I think it would be an awesome trade for the Eagles, and this is why. Henry's a guy who is still a pretty good back. He's not the, 1,900-yard back that he's been or the workout horse guy. He probably could be, but you don't need him to be that here. You could really use a little thunder and lightning duo with DeAndre Swift, getting all the quick yards, quick outside stuff, and then pounding teams on the inside with Derrick Henry. And why do I think this deal makes some sort of sense? Well, the Eagles Super Bowl team came in 2017, and they made a trade where they got Jay Ajayi when they had LeGarrette Blount, and people were like, what are you doing? Like, you've got LeGarrette Blount, this run game, you got Jay Ajayi. Okay, great. And they used Ajayi during the first 3 quarters of the game, and then they kind of ran that game out a lot with LeGarrette. And I think this team right now needs a finisher. They need what the Phillies didn't have, a closer. They need to go out there and find that Derrick Henry who can just pound between the tackles. And you don't have to just use him in the fourth quarter. You can open the game with Swift, 2 series, go to Henry for a series, back to Swift, maybe 2 more from Henry. I mean, you could rotate those guys, but in the end, you're going to want to close that game out late with Derrick Henry. So that's an interesting one. And he floated out the idea of the Eagles getting Derrick Henry and a 7th-round pick for a 2024 4th-round pick. Maybe it was a 2024 5th-round pick and a 2025 4th-round pick. So that was something that was floated out by Mike Tannenbaum. I think that deal would be very beneficial to the Eagles. I also think that deal is beneficial to the Titans. Listen, the Titans aren't winning anything. They understand that. They are trying to start things over. They are trying to kind of reset their organization. And to do it, they have to make trades that fans essentially view as the Eagles rip them off. The Eagles would rip them off if you are grading the trade on who got the better player. And how would you give up Kevin Byard for a 5th and a 6th round pick of Terrell Edmonds, who stinks? Of course. But they're just looking to add more picks, more picks, more picks, more picks. If they got another deal where they got a bunch of picks and gave up Derrick Henry, look, they know they're not winning with Derrick Henry. That ship has sailed for the Tennessee Titans. But if they can make a trade where they get a couple more picks, another 4th, another 5th, plus the 5th and the 6th that they got, they might not sound like they're late round picks, 5th and 6th. But that would certainly add to your team, but it would also certainly add to the Tennessee draft capital that they have moving forward for a team that's looking to reload. So just because it sounds like the Eagles would be getting the better end of that deal, the Titans would be open to doing it because they're a team right now that has no interest in trying to win in this season. So I think it does make sense that the Eagles could pull this deal off. I don't know that that's something they're looking for, but we've talked about on the radio show. If you listen to me on the radio on 97.3 ESPN in South Jersey, Sal Paolantonio joins me every Friday, and he has mentioned on the show multiple times for the last couple weeks that the Eagles need a finisher back. They need another big running back. And we asked him about it on Friday, and, he really liked the idea of Derrick Henry, and it makes sense. I like the idea of Derrick Henry too, because ultimately, Henry is such a different back from the guy you already have. He is such a different back from DeAndre Swift, but at 29 years old, how much left does he have in the tank? I think he has enough this year. I don't know if he's a guy that you want to, say, hey, this is a long-term piece. Obviously not. Him and Swift would be guys that you're trying to win a Super Bowl with this year. So something to think about there. One other area that I think is interesting, they got the safety in Byard. Linebacker, we kicked around. Diana Rossini mentioned that. The Derek Barnett thing, I think Barnett probably has no interest in the league. I don't think anybody's interested in Derek Barnett, so I wouldn't get excited about that. But if they can move him, the Henry thing, how about another running back? Is there another running back out there they can kick the tires on? What's going on with Rashad Penny? Why can't Rashad Penny, why isn't he on the field? Why do they have no interest in him? Why is he someone that they haven't even activated really other than 1 week? So that's something I'm interested in, moving forward here. Is Penny a guy they give a shot to at some point? Do they look at Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, and DeAndre Swift and say, look, these guys are repetitive. We have 3 guys who essentially do the same thing. And Penny, he got 3 carries this year for 9 yards. No, I'm not saying he looked great when he went out there, but why? Here's a guy averaged 6 yards a carry 2 years in a row, and he can't get on the field. What's the reason he can't get on the field? That's something I'm interested in. Other than those areas, linebacker, slot corner, they went and got the safety, running back. The only other thing you may hear about, I guess, would be maybe some offensive line depth. The Eagles are on their second right guard, Sayamala left. Juergens is going to be coming back here, so they'll get Juergens back, and Suopeta's in there. Do they look at another tackle to maybe replace Jack Driscoll as the main swing tackle? Possibility. I don't think that it is a huge necessity. I think if Lane Johnson gets hurt and they have to play Driscoll over a elongated period of time, he will be better than he was the night we saw him. Why? Well, because he'll know he's the starter and get all the reps in practice. I mean, that's generally what happens. Some guys get out there and they're not really ready to play, or they're not up to speed. They didn't get any snaps during practice. So that's something to think about. Any other questions for Eagles at the trade deadline? You can follow me on Twitter at Mike Gill Show and listen to me on the radio on 97.3 ESPN. We try to do these Believe in the Eagles podcasts as much as possible. Download, like, rate, review, subscribe. If you're watching this on Believe in Eagles YouTube here, leave comments at the bottom. I'll try to answer those questions in future episodes. We're going to try to continue to monitor all the trade stuff out there. They already added Julio Jones as a street free agent. They added Kevin Byard. They added Josiah Scott. This is a team that's all in. This is a team that's got to try to win a Super Bowl this season, right now. Much like the Phillies, you're starting to get guys, you're in your primes, but your primes turn into older players really quick. You don't want to see all of a sudden, and I don't think A.J. Brown's getting old overnight. I'm not suggesting that. Devonta Smith not getting old. But you got some offensive linemen. Lane Johnson, how many more years is he playing? Kelsey, how many more years is he playing? So those are 2 guys to definitely keep an eye on. On the defensive side of the ball, Brandon Graham's getting older. He hasn't done much this year. Fletcher Cox is getting older. He's had a pretty good year. You're older at corner with Slay and Bradbury. So you got to try to take advantage of this window with this team right now. I know the 49ers are kicking tires around. Other than them, Dallas, Detroit in the NFC, I don't know that there's another emerging team in the NFC right now. Who would be that? I think it's Philly, San Francisco, Detroit, Dallas, those four. I don't know that there is a fifth team that really has emerged as a team that you should have a lot of concern with at this point. I mean, the season will progress, it will go on. Teams could do things by Tuesday. Seattle, the Rams. Anybody else I'm missing? Minnesota, doubtful. I don't think there's a team in the South with the Saints and the Bucks and Atlanta. So right now, I think there's four teams in the NFC: the Eagles, San Francisco, Detroit, and Dallas. You put them in any four order that you want there. So that's a trade deadline look at what's happening with the Eagles. Again, couple reports. Diana Rossini, the Eagles are looking to make some moves still after the buyer trade. Linebacker, she mentioned Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated. He mentioned Jordan Hicks by name, right? You take a look at Jordan Hicks, and he would be a linebacker that, I don't know. I don't know that. I mean, the linebacker position hasn't killed this team. It's not something that you're like, man, they are really struggling at linebacker. But I definitely think they need some depth at the position in case somebody got hurt. So there you go. All right. Like, rate, review, subscribe as we talk about. Do that for me. If you can leave some comments on the Apple Podcast, Google feeds, subscribe to this podcast in the audio form or here on the video. All right. I'm Mike Gill. This is Believe in Eagles on the Believe Podcast Network.